My stepdad said I was too old to live at home, so I bought it and raised the rent. He once told me, grown women don't live at home forever. 2 years later, I bought the house and gave him a lease with my name on it. And when he complained about the rent increase, I smiled and said, grown men should probably learn how to pay bills. So, back when this all started, I was 24. Had just moved back home after college, still trying to find my footing, save money, and not drown. And honestly, I thought I was doing everything right. I wasn't out here freeloading. I wasn't being irresponsible. I was working full-time at a nonprofit, paying half the bills, chipping in for groceries, even handling the Wi-Fi and utilities. I was doing everything I could to not feel like a burden. But to him, my stepdad, I was nothing more than baggage. That's literally the word he used. He'd say crap like, you know, when I married your mom, I didn't expect a 24-year-old roommate. Or, grown women don't live at home forever. Like, bro, what? I'm not exactly out here throwing keggers in the basement. I'm just trying to make it through this economy without collapsing. Anyway, he wasn't always like this. When I was a kid, he was the fun stepdad. He came into our lives when I was 12, took us to theme parks, cooked spaghetti on Fridays, even helped with my science fair volcano. I remember thinking, okay, maybe he's not so bad, but the older I got, the weirder he got. Like, the minute I hit adulthood, it's like the warmth disappeared. It was all sports talk, stock market rants, and low-key jabs at me still being around. He worked from home, some remote sales gig, always in the recliner with ESPN on one screen and golf highlights on the other. Meanwhile, I'd be folding laundry and doing dishes after my 9-hour shift, and he'd act like I was the guest. Like one time I made dinner, chicken stir-fry, and he goes, did you use garlic? You know that upsets my stomach. Like, okay, Bob, sorry my $13 meal wasn't customized like a Michelin menu. My bad. It wasn't just that he was passive-aggressive. He was also deeply territorial about his space. Even though it was my mom's house too, the house her parents left her. Like, it was literally willed to her when Grandma passed. But somehow, he'd turned it into his little kingdom. And I was just the extra weight. He'd say stuff like, maybe if you didn't major in gender studies, you'd be in your own place by now. FYI, I majored in communications, but thanks for proving my point, Bob. And my mom? She wasn't cruel, but she was a classic peacemaker. Always saying, don't mind him, he's just stressed, or he's got a lot on his plate. Girl, unless his plate is full of empathy and decency, I'm not interested. But I didn't want to cause drama. So I kept my head down, saved every dollar I could, and waited. I figured I'd be out in a year. Tops. Until one night he snapped. It was a random Wednesday. I came home a little late from work, team happy hour, nothing wild, and he was waiting in the kitchen like a Bond villain. No lights on, just him standing there with his arms crossed and a single lamp glowing behind him like it was a movie scene. He didn't yell. He didn't even look mad. Just smug. And he goes, I think it's time you started packing. I laughed at first like, what? But he was serious. You've had a good run, but grown women don't live at home forever. It's time to spread your wings. Y'all. I froze. My mom was at her sister's that night, so it was just him and me. And in that moment, it was like all the crap he'd been saying finally solidified. I was being pushed out, evicted from my own childhood home. I asked him straight up, did Mom say this was okay? He shrugged. She agrees it's probably for the best. You need to learn how to stand on your own. Mind you, this is while I'm paying half the bills. I literally paid the electric bill that week. I went in my room, shut the door, and just sat there like stunned, like my body knew what was happening but my brain hadn't caught up. All I could hear was the sound of ESPN from downstairs and the smell of his leftover chicken wings in the trash. I didn't cry. Not then. But that night, something in me flipped. And the next morning, I made a Google Doc titled, Operation Get Out. I gave myself 6 months. 6 months to save, grind, and bounce. But what I didn't know then was, life had a different timeline in store. And so did karma. So I started looking for apartments the very next morning. I wasn't gonna beg. I was just gonna move out quietly, save what was left of my sanity, and never look back. That was the plan. Until something hilarious happened. Okay, maybe not hilarious at the time, but it aged like fine wine. About a week after the eviction, I was digging through some old documents in the home office. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was literally just trying to find my birth certificate because I needed it for a job interview background check. But guess what else I found? The house deed. And the mortgage paperwork. And you guys, that man Bob wasn't even on it. Not one line. It was in my mom's name only. Like I said earlier, it was her parents' house. And when they passed, she inherited it. The mortgage was just a leftover refinance situation from when she remodeled the kitchen. But again, only in her name. So why the F was Bob acting like he ran the place? That little discovery sparked something deep in my chest. It wasn't even anger yet. It was like this slow, icy realization. Oh, this man built his entire sense of authority on absolutely nothing. He had nothing. No legal stake. No equity. Not even his name scribbled on the back page. All bark, zero ownership. And from that moment on, I started paying attention differently. Like the way he'd changed the thermostat settings like he owned the weather. The way he sat in the living room like it was his throne. The way he made house rules and talked about under my roof when it literally wasn't his roof. I didn't say anything at first. I kept playing it cool, looking for a studio, taking extra shifts at work. I even started freelancing a bit on the side, doing social media for a local Pilates studio and tutoring teens in English comp. Every dime went into a separate savings account labeled Freedom Fund. But then, a plot twist. My mom and I went out for lunch one Sunday, just us, and she looked exhausted. Not like tired, like my soul is tired. So I gently asked, "Are you okay? Is something going on with you and Bob?" She sighed, long and heavy. Then she said something I'll never forget. "If I had the money, I'd buy him out just to get some peace." Girl, that's when it clicked. I asked her, "Buy him out of what? He doesn't own anything." And she just kind of blinked at me, confused. Because yeah, she'd never really thought about it like that. Turns out Bob had been paying some bills like the internet and random home repairs. So my mom just assumed they were building something together. Emotionally, maybe. But legally? No. And I could see the cracks forming in her brain. Like all the years of him puffing up and acting like the head of the household were suddenly under review. That's when I told her. I'd found the deed. That she was the only name on it. That if she ever wanted out, there were options. At first, she was like, "Don't be dramatic." But over the next few weeks, the seed grew. Meanwhile, Bob was still being Bob. Still making comments like, "You girls wouldn't last a day if I left." Or, "This house would fall apart without me." "Sir, the only thing falling apart is the couch you refuse to get up from." Oh, and wanna know what really pushed me over the edge? I got a raise. A decent one, actually. My nonprofit had a budget bump and I moved up to assistant comms director. When I told my mom, she was thrilled. Bob? His reaction? "Nice. Maybe now you can finally afford to get out." Bro, I was done. That night I opened a new tab and Googled, "How to buy a house from your parent." And that was the start of the endgame. I didn't just want to move out anymore. I wanted to own the whole board. And if the house was in my mom's name and she was open to selling and Bob wasn't on any of the legal documents, then there was a chance. So I started doing research, called a friend from college who worked in real estate, met with a financial advisor, got pre-approved for a mortgage under a first-time buyer program, built an actual plan. It was slow, painful, quiet. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend. I just worked and saved and stayed small, like a little mouse in the corner watching the whole room crumble. And then, 2 years later, I made the offer. To my mom, I sat her down, poured her a glass of red wine, and slid a folder across the table. Inside, a legit fair market value offer with proof of funds, the pre-approval, everything. And I said, "Mom, if you want out, this is how we do it. Let me buy the house." She stared at me for so long I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She just nodded and whispered, Okay, deep breath, because this is where things start heating up. So my mom accepted the offer. We spent the next 2 months doing everything super quietly. Like, don't even breathe too loud levels of sneaky. All the paperwork was done through her personal email, not the shared one with Bob. She used her private cell for phone calls. Every document was reviewed and signed on her lunch break or during her solo errands. Bob? Absolutely clueless. This man was still lounging in his recliner every day like king of the castle, making sarcastic comments about how I was still around like he wasn't about to be signing a lease with my name on it in just a few weeks. It honestly took everything in me not to snap, especially when he made it personal. Like one night I came home from work and he looked up from the couch and said, "You ever think about how much easier your mom and I would have it if we just Airbnb'd that room of yours?" Dead serious. Like I wasn't even a person to him anymore, just a line item on his imaginary budget. But instead of popping off, I just smiled and said, "Maybe someday," and walked away. Little did he know, someday was about to land on his face. So let's talk about closing day. It was quiet. No big celebration. No keys changing hands or balloons or whatever. Just a stack of paperwork at a little office building on the other side of town. I wore a plain sweatshirt. Didn't even post a selfie because this wasn't about flash. This was about payback. After everything was signed, I went straight to the bank and opened a new account in my name, labeled Property Management, just to keep it cute. Then I called my mom. She sounded free. She told me, "This is the first time in years I felt like I'm not waiting for someone to snap at me." And I got chills. She moved out 2 days later. She told Bob she was visiting her sister for a few weeks, which wasn't that weird. He didn't suspect a thing. Not even when she took her jewelry and half the nice towels. Meanwhile, I was quietly prepping his paperwork, the official tenant lease agreement. I went all out, hired a real estate lawyer to draft it up, included clear rent terms, late fees, maintenance responsibilities, even noise limitations after 10 p.m. It was airtight. And guess what name was printed right across the top? Landlord, my full name. I even put it in bold. And then, I waited for the perfect moment. So here's the big reveal. It was a Sunday. Bob was on the couch. Again, golf on the TV, his plate of wings on the coffee table like clockwork. I walked in with a manila envelope and said, "Hey Bob, got something for you." He barely looked up, just said, "What's this?" I said, "Your new lease. The house was sold last week. New owner wants to keep you as a tenant." He stared at me, blinked, smirked like I was joking. "Very funny," he said. And then I pulled out the deed. set it right on the coffee table next to his plate of wings, and just stood there. His eyes dropped down. He scanned the paper, and I swear on everything, I have never seen a man's face go from smug to horrified so fast in my life. You bought the house? I nodded. Sure did. And starting next month, rent goes up $300. He sputtered. Like literally sputtered. You can't just raise the rent. I smiled. Sweet as sugar. Grown men should probably learn how to pay bills. Mic drop. You guys, the silence that followed was delicious. He just sat there, mouth open, like someone unplugged his whole brain, and I just walked away, left him sitting in the shock. That night, he tried to talk to my mom, who, by the way, had already blocked his number. She'd moved into a cozy little apartment near her sister and was thriving. She even signed over her portion of the utility accounts to me just to really seal the deal. Bob? He went into panic mode, started pacing around the house like a caged animal, muttering things like, "This isn't fair, and you tricked us. Bro, you tricked yourself." And the best part? He had no choice but to sign the lease. He didn't have the savings to move out. No emergency fund. No backup plan. His credit wasn't good enough for a solo apartment, and none of his family wanted to deal with him. He was stuck, living in my house, paying me rent, following my rules. Karma? She didn't just circle back. She moonwalked into the living room and smacked him with the remote. So let me paint the picture for you. Bob was fuming. He signed the lease, sure, but not without making it the most dramatic performance of his life. He slammed drawers, grunted around the kitchen like a cartoon villain, and mumbled under his breath every time I walked into the room. You ever seen a grown man sulk like a toddler who didn't get the last cookie? That was Bob. But here's the thing, he couldn't do anything about it. I was legally the homeowner. The lease was legit. The rent was fair, especially considering he'd been living rent-free for years. And he knew that if he caused too much trouble, I could serve a notice and be fully within my rights. So he simmered, passive-aggressively, loudly, obnoxiously, like he'd accidentally leave dirty dishes in the sink even though the lease said tenants had to maintain shared spaces. He'd blast the TV after 10 p.m., which again violated the agreement. I started logging every infraction like I was on an episode of Judge Judy, but I didn't snap. Not yet. 'Cause I knew he was planning something. I could feel it. And guess what? I was right. Fast forward about 3 weeks. I come home from work, and Bob is standing in the kitchen looking like a smug little weasel. And he goes, "You might want to sit down for this." I blink. "For what?" He grins and says, "I had a little chat with a lawyer friend of mine. Seems there might be some loopholes in your lease. Might even be a chance to challenge the sale." I had to physically stop myself from laughing, 'cause I knew he was bluffing. There were no loopholes. My lawyer had triple-checked everything. So I just raised an eyebrow and went, "Cool. Have your lawyer send me an email." He froze. 'Cause yeah, this lawyer was probably just a friend from his poker night who once watched a YouTube video on eviction law. I turned around, made a cup of tea, and went about my evening. But deep down, I knew he wasn't done. And sure enough, 3 days later, he escalated. Okay, so here's where it gets absolutely ridiculous. I get home from work, and the entire living room has been rearranged. Like Bob had moved everything. Couch was now blocking the hallway. My bookshelf had been pushed into the corner. And my little entryway bench? Just gone. I walk in like, what happened here? And Bob, sitting in his recliner like a smug little goblin, goes, "Oh, I just thought it was time the house felt more like home." Sir, the audacity. I tell him calmly, "You're violating the lease by altering common areas without approval." He shrugs. "It's not like you live here anymore. You're just the landlord now, right?" And that's when I realized what he was doing. He was trying to force me out, make me so uncomfortable that I'd back down, that I'd just give up and let him reclaim the house like some delusional king taking back his throne. But he underestimated something huge. I don't quit. And I don't lose. So I documented everything, took photos of the furniture, screenshotted texts, called my lawyer again, and the next day I issued a formal lease violation notice, complete with a 14-day correction period. The look on Bob's face when he opened that letter? Chef's kiss. But the best part that still lives rent-free in my head? He tried to fight back. He actually filed a complaint with the city's housing authority, claimed I was harassing him and making the property uninhabitable. So of course they sent an inspector, and when the inspector arrived, I welcomed them with fresh coffee, a folder of neatly organized documents, and a tour of the sparkling clean property I owned. Bob? Couldn't find any violations. The inspector even commented, "Honestly, this is one of the best-kept rentals I've seen all month." When I tell you Bob's face turned the color of expired hummus, he was seething. And me? I just smiled and said, "Let me know if you need anything else." That night, he finally cracked, came stomping into the kitchen while I was microwaving leftovers and yelled, "You think this makes you better than me?" I didn't even flinch. I just looked at him calmly and said, "No, but it definitely makes me smarter." And I walked out. So here's what happened next. Bob had officially entered his villain era. And like most mediocre men who suddenly realize they're not in control anymore, he went full petty. He started trying to win people over. Family members, neighbors, Facebook friends, the guy at the gas station. anyone who'd listened to his sob story about how his ungrateful stepdaughter stole his house out from under him. And for a while it kind of worked. I'd run into my aunt at the grocery store and she'd give me this judgy little, he's really going through a lot right now, like I hadn't just spent 2 years being treated like a freeloader while paying half the bills. But I didn't take the bait. 'Cause I had receipts. And the truth, it always finds a way out. So the family cookout comes around. It's this annual thing we do every summer. Potluck style, plastic chairs in the backyard, way too many salads, and one uncle who always brings his Bluetooth speaker like he's DJ Khaled or something. And somehow, Bob still gets invited. Don't ask, family dynamics are weird. I wasn't gonna go at first. But then I thought, you know what? No. I've spent years hiding, downplaying, shrinking myself to keep the peace. I own the house now. I own my life. I'm showing up. So I pulled up in my little Honda with homemade lemon bars and the biggest smile on my face. And the minute I walked into that backyard, the vibe shifted. Bob was already there, of course, posted up like he ran the place, talking to a group of cousins, beer in hand, telling some dramatic story that made him look like the victim of the century. I ignored it, said hi to my grandma, hugged my mom, complimented a baby I didn't recognize. All good. But then he made a scene. About an hour in, someone brought up how beautiful the house is looking lately. Because I'd been redoing the garden and updating the windows. And Bob couldn't help himself. Loud enough for everyone to hear, he goes, yeah, well, wouldn't know much about that anymore. The house isn't mine, remember? Got bought out from under me by someone who thought she was smarter than the rest of us. Dead silence. People turned. Forks paused midair. And I just stood there, blinking. Like, really, dude? But instead of yelling or storming off, I walked over. Calm. Chill. Lemon bar in hand. I looked him dead in the face and said, well, I am smarter than the rest of you. I read the deed. Gasps. Laughter. Someone literally choked on a piece of coleslaw. Bob's face went tomato red, and I kept going. But don't worry, I made sure to include a rent discount for emotionally fragile tenants. Just let me know if you need to downgrade to a studio. It was savage. It was precise. It was earned. After that, the energy shifted completely. My cousin started pulling me aside like, okay, Queen, you really did that. My aunt apologized for taking his side. Even my grandma, who's usually Switzerland, gave me a tiny little nod like, yeah, you won. Bob, he left early. Didn't even take home leftovers. Just slinked out like a wet cat, muttering something about how unfair life is and kids these days. I didn't even watch him go. I was too busy refilling my lemonade and updating people on my house projects. Because now, I wasn't just the girl who still lived at home. I was the woman who bought it. But the story doesn't end there. Because a few weeks later, Bob made one final move. And it was the dumbest thing he's ever done. Y'all, when I say this man truly thought he could destroy something that I built, I almost admire the commitment to being the villain in his own story. Almost. So let's rewind a bit. After the cookout roast, which by the way my cousin still calls the great lemon bar burn of the decade, Bob basically went ghost mode inside the house. Just silence. Brooding. Bitter dishes left half-washed in the sink. But I knew that silence wasn't peace. It was plotting. Started small. One night I came home and my bathroom light switch snapped off when I tried to use it. No big deal. I replaced it. Then the next week my laundry settings panel cracked. Like someone hit it, and hard. Bob acted clueless. Maybe it was just old, but the cherry on top? Oh my gosh. The basement. I had finally cleared it out, cleaned it, set up a cute little storage system with labeled bins and shelves like some Pinterest-adjacent adult. It was honestly the most organized thing I'd done in months. Until I came downstairs one morning and there was water. Everywhere. Not a leak, not a drip. A literal flood. The washer hose had been yanked out of the utility sink, and water had been left running for who knows how long. Like, no accident could have pulled that off. It had sabotage written all over it. And guess who was conveniently out running errands the entire time? Yep, Bob. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I panicked. For like 10 minutes. 'Cause it was bad. The floor was soaked. Some of the bins were floating. I had to turn off the main valve and start tossing towels like I was on Survivor, Home Edition. But then the panic wore off, and the rage kicked in. Because this wasn't petty anymore. This was property damage. This was a crime. So I took pictures, videos, called my plumber, then called my lawyer. And the next day, I served Bob with a 72-hour cure or quit notice. Basically, fix what you broke or get out. Legally, it was water damage. That qualified. Especially since I had surveillance footage. Oh yeah, forgot to mention, I had installed one of those little motion-activated Wise cams above the basement steps like a month earlier. Guess who was on camera, pulling the hose loose? With a screwdriver. Like, bro wasn't even slick. When I showed him the footage, his jaw literally clicked from how tight he clenched it. He tried to talk his way out of it. I was just trying to adjust it. That video doesn't prove intent. It was already loose. But my response? I slid the quit notice across the table and said, you've got 3 days. That's it. No yelling. No drama. Just facts and documentation. He stormed out of the room, slammed a door, and didn't come out until the next day. When he finally did, he was pale, sweaty, and holding a checkbook. Y'all, He offered me $2,000 to forget the whole thing. Like this was a soap opera bribe. I looked him in the eye and said, "Bob, I don't need your money. I need you out of my house." The end. He moved out 3 days later. Tried to make it dramatic, of course. Tossed a bunch of broken furniture on the lawn like he was making a point. But the only point he made was that he couldn't afford to replace a single piece of it. And when he left, you know what he said? "You'll regret this. You need men like me around." Girl, if I'd had popcorn, I would have thrown it at his retreating back. What happened after that? Peace. I fixed the basement, repainted the hallways, put up a tiny gallery wall in the kitchen that said things like "Home Sweet Home" and not Bob's Place anymore. Okay, maybe that one was just in my head, but it felt different, felt mine. And my mom, she started visiting again. Actually smiled in the kitchen. She said, "This house finally feels warm again." Yeah, because the mold of Bob's energy had finally been scrubbed out. So, after Bob officially moved out, you'd think I was dancing in the living room with a victory banner, right? And yeah, maybe I was. A little. But what surprised me was how quiet it felt afterward. No sarcastic comments coming from the couch. No slamming of cabinets. No walking on eggshells in my own kitchen. Just me, my playlist, and the sound of a house finally exhaling. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. For a while, I didn't touch Bob's old room. I just left it, door shut. Like a little time capsule of bad energy I wasn't ready to clear yet. But one random Sunday I cracked the door open and y'all, I burst out laughing. The man had taken everything except a single crusty Patriots jersey, even though he's not even from Massachusetts, and a dusty copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad sitting on the windowsill like a joke from the universe. You can't make this stuff up. I donated the jersey, recycled the book, and finally turned that room into something new. Painted the walls this soft green, put a big chair by the window, added shelves for my books, plants, and all the stuff I never had space for before. It became my space. Not a stepdad's leftover echo chamber. I was sleeping better, eating better, waking up with more energy, like I had been wearing emotional ankle weights and finally tossed them off. Even my career took off. No joke. I started freelancing full-time, built a small roster of clients, and launched my own digital branding side hustle. Within 6 months, I was making more than I did at the nonprofit. More than Bob ever made sitting in that recliner pretending to work. And then the weirdest part happened. I got a letter from Bob. No return address. Just my name, written kind of messy like he was either nervous or writing in a Waffle House parking lot. It said, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I was wrong. You didn't deserve how I treated you. I let my pride ruin a good thing. I hope you can forgive me someday. If not, I get it. I just wanted to say it before I disappear for good." Y'all, I sat there on my front steps for a full 10 minutes just holding that letter. Because on one hand, it felt too little too late. Like, bro, you're apologizing now after nearly flooding my basement and calling me baggage for years? But on the other hand, there was something in the way he wrote it that felt genuinely broken. Like he finally saw the wreckage he'd caused and had no one left to blame. I didn't write back. Not because I'm petty, but because I didn't need to. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. Sometimes it just means you don't carry their mess in your pockets anymore. And me, I was too busy watering my plants, answering client calls, and dancing barefoot in my own house to look back. Okay, deep breath. This is the part that kinda hit me in the gut, in the best way. So, fast forward a few months. Life's good. I've got new curtains. A little herb garden on the windowsill. I bake on Sundays now like some kind of cozy Pinterest dandy. My mom visits every weekend and brings wine. We watch terrible reality shows and just exist in peace. One afternoon, I'm out front pulling weeds, giving suburban homeowner vibes, when a car I don't recognize pulls into the driveway. It's a beat-up sedan. Tinted windows. I squint trying to place it and then the door opens and out steps my cousin Jenna. Now, little backstory. Jenna was one of the few family members who kinda fell for Bob's pity tour after the whole "she stole my house" meltdown. She didn't say anything outright, but she kept her distance, and I got the vibe she was judging me behind polite smiles. So when she walks up, I'm like, cautiously curious. She's holding something. A housewarming card and a plant. Like an actual alive, not from Target plant. She hands it to me and goes, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have checked in. I didn't know what you were going through. And I don't know what came over me, but I hugged her. Right there. In the front yard. Dirt on my hands and everything. Because even though it wasn't necessary, it meant something. It was validation. Proof that the truth does win eventually. That people see you even if it takes a while." She stayed for coffee. We talked. Caught up. Laughed about the lemon bar takedown. And when she left, I stood in the doorway for a second just breathing. And then it hit me. This house, the one Bob tried to gatekeep, the one he treated like a throne he sat on while everyone else served him, it's mine now. Not just legally. Emotionally. Energetically. Fully. I made it through every jab, every guilt trip, every condescending speech. I paid the bills. I found the loophole. I stayed quiet when I needed to and loud when it mattered. I didn't just survive him. I outgrew him. He told me to pack my bags. So I packed a plan, a deed, a whole future. And now, I'm unpacking joy, peace, and maybe a matching couch set. We'll see what IKEA has on sale. Anyway, that's the story. I own my childhood home. I kicked out the emotional mildew that was Bob. My mom is finally happy, and I've never slept better. So yeah, if someone ever tells you grown women don't live at home forever, feel free to smile and say, exactly. We own them now. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm off to drink iced coffee that Bob would have mocked, and scroll Pinterest for bathroom tile inspo.